say, okay, I have an issue, or I have a problem, or I have an idea, and I want to get some thoughts and feedback on that. Right? And so it's the interaction from the group that's going to try and resolve and address that issue. And once we've cycled through that round, either they'll get out of the chair, someone else will get up and say, well, I have an issue, a problem, or a comment I'd like to make, and get up and keep the whole thing going.
This is the big question. The tension that exists between cooperation and competition. We've got to figure out some language, some energy, some way in which we deal with that, because I think a lot of sustainability efforts get dismissed, diminished, marginalized, and set to the side when they say, well, that's very, very nice, honey, but you get paid over here for being successful in the competition ring. I've said this many times. I know everybody keeps saying, what's the business case for sustainability? Again, turn it around. What is the business case for destroying life and ecosystems on Earth? Don't let anybody else ask you to give the business case for sustainability. What's the business case for otherwise?
Imagine the amount of education required to promote something that's new. Very well along the lines of sustainability initiatives, they're all new. They haven't really reached the household into everyday life yet. That's what we as leaders want to change.
Ultimately, I do believe that we have to almost think clean slate. Like if you were going to build a bank, or if you're going to build a car company, and you wanted to make it completely sustainable, what would it look like? Don't start with what you have today. What would it look like? Clean slate, and force ourselves to propel ourselves out of where we are today.
That when Martin Luther gave his speech, he didn't talk about, I have a nightmare. And that's what environmentalists have been saying for the last 40 years. And a few people are afraid of that nightmare. And yeah, oh wow, that's a really interesting nightmare. Boy, is it going to be that bad? Most people don't want to hear our nightmare. They want to hear the dream. They want to hear the positive. And this is what I think a real difference with the day today is, the way that Yasmin's framed it, is we're successful. How do we get there? Let's not talk about problems, and let's not talk about challenges and difficulties and failures and, oh my gods, let's talk about successes. So I think that language issue is a really, really important one.
When we try and do something that has never been done for the first time here in Canada, we look to other areas around the world to get inspiration and to learn from the best. And I don't think it's only developing countries that are necessarily rebuilding, but also, we were inspired by companies like Marks and Spencer's, who are looking at CSR from a completely new lens, not just around philanthropy, but taking that all the way to the future when it's really a closed loop system. So maybe that is sort of a dream where, and even in retail, we can actually consider all the things that we purchase has actually a home to come back to and recycled back into the system that it came from. And that to me is a dream, or is an aspiration that we can talk to in terms of where we go next.
When I look at Canada, let's face it, we are a natural resource-based economy. There are not many other G8 countries whose economy is based on natural resources. Why should we feel ashamed of it? But the only reason I would feel ashamed of it is if we didn't come up with the definition of what is clean oil and green uranium and use our expertise in hydroelectric to promote energy diversity and to promote what we're really good at.
I think that a real plausible next step for this leadership group is maybe to take this on the road and take it into the colleges and the universities and get as much buy-in as we can from the upcoming generation of leaders. There's many of them out there. And they got more in this than we do, because we'll be long gone and they'll be fixing the mess.
I believe that all of us in this room are looking at this from a leadership perspective, but there are so many people in Toronto that need to connect on sustainability across industry and really work on professional development.
One of the comments this morning that really stuck with me is the status quo is the status quo for a reason. And that's what people are comfortable with. And I think one of our key challenges is going to be getting out of our comfort zones and helping others get out of their comfort zones. And so the theme that I would table is creating the conditions for unusual collaboration.
We're in the most culturally diverse city in the world here. And half of the newcomers that come to Canada come to Toronto. And so we're looking everywhere else for answers. They're in our backyard.
And to talk to what everyone's been talking about, like collaboration and competition, our generation, we're so used to collaboration, it's in our DNA. Chatham House rules, nobody really cares about stealing music. But we don't look at it as stealing because then we take it, we R&D it, and we make something really amazing with it. And we build some of the best software in the world because we just built on each other's work.
I'm going to share something with you personally, a personal thing about my job. I work for an environmental nonprofit. I could be considered a young leader of tomorrow, an emerging leader, whatever you want to call me, if I want to personalize that. I made a very critical decision in the type of work that I do that was a massive trade-off between pay and meaningful work. That was an incredibly difficult decision, and it's not about me. What I'm sharing it with you is to try to push this agenda so that people that are following my footsteps don't have to make that decision.
We've been talking a lot about young people, which I'm really excited about because that's one of my areas of research is how do we engage young people in environmental initiatives. So I encourage you, any of you who are on boards, to have somebody under 30 on your board of directors. And that's one thing we're doing on the board that I have right now. Find somebody that has some great new ideas, that's thinking like the up-and-coming consumer, and get them on your board.
This is a place for action. So what we're hoping to come out of here is to really narrow it down to 4 or 5, maybe even 3 topics or decisions and say, what can we do around these 2 or 3 decisions? It might be, for example, just listening to the conversation, it might be, how can we engage youth to bring them into corporations and have some dialogue going on between the generations? And then what company or companies are willing to provide a pilot for those, rather than just talking heads?
We have to bridge the gap between the old and the new. With all due respect, we can't erase the past and start with a clean slate, but we can think out of the box.
But we need government intervention, and we need some kind of advertising, and cooperation. It's just certain demographic gets it and others just don't care.
I believe our biggest opportunity in a meeting like this is to come out of here with some common language around this theme. If we look at this board and see these words, and it's been mentioned several times here, the gentleman that just spoke, we have the opportunity to frame the conversation.
I think CSR is where things used to be, and we've moved to sustainability, and now I hear things about resilience. That's really what it should be, not sustainability. And when we talk about sustainability, we might mean environmental, we might mean the whole triple bottom line. We, amongst ourselves, could mean different things, and those people, if you meet someone on the street and you say you're in sustainability, or corporate social responsibility for that matter, they don't know. And so could we collectively come to some terminology that would work for all of us, would mean what we're talking about, and people would be able to get on board with what that is? And it may be as simple as going back to the triple bottom line.
Some of my colleagues have said, well, you're a wonderful country, Canada, but you have to realize that from our perspective, you live in a bubble. You think that you have all the time in the world to address this. You think that you have all the time in the world to look at how does the social fit in, how does the environment fit in, how does the economy fit in. But look at us over here outside of Canada. Look at us and what we're struggling with, and you don't have that time. Someday you'll realize that, but you don't have that time. So that's the thought that I'd like to leave you with today, that when we're looking at the spatial aspects of sustainability, we're also looking at the time aspects.